A vase of white lilies stood on the console table, arranged by someone who knew what wealth was supposed to look like. He registered all of it the way a pilot registers clouds, in passing, at altitude. Then he stepped past the archway into the living room, and his world stopped moving. On the polished marble, a woman knelt with a rag, sleeves rolled to the elbow, hair coiled into a practical bun. Rosa. He had approved her hire. Clean background check, excellent references, calm. She was the kind of presence you're supposed to not notice because everything stays tidy when she's in the room. She scrubbed a wide, sticky circle of grape juice where a glass had tipped. He noticed the red on her hands, the pink of raw skin at the knuckles, and the slow, patient circles she drew, as if the floor were a wound that needed tending. But it wasn't Rosa that made his throat tighten. A small blonde boy stood beside her, wobbling on little blue crutches, a dishcloth clutched in his fist like a flag. Ethan, 4 years old, his son. The boy leaned forward, tongue caught between his teeth in concentration, and dragged the cloth over the outer ring of the spill. His left leg trembled, his right foot braced. He looked like a sapling trying to hold its ground in wind. "Don't worry, Aunt Rosa," Ethan said, breath coming in tiny puffs. "I can help you with this part." Rosa glanced up, startled, at first because she hadn't heard the front door, then because she saw who was standing there. The rag paused in her hand. In one swift motion, she put it down, pushed herself up, and smoothed her apron like a curtain coming down after a rehearsal. "Good evening, Mr. Carter," she said, voice steady but small. "I didn't expect you so soon, sir. I'll finish and—" Ethan turned toward the doorway, eyes a summer sky blue that managed to make the whole room warmer. "Dad, you're early." He tried to pivot too quickly. One crutch skidded a fraction. Rosa reached out with the speed of someone who had done this many times and steadied him by the elbow. It wasn't dramatic, no gasp, no near fall, but it was the kind of movement that told a truth. She knew his balance like a second language. Mr. Carter opened his mouth and found nothing waiting there. For once, no plan, no reply. He took another step in, slower now, as if the air had thickened. "What are you doing?" he asked, and even he heard how careful the question sounded. Ethan beamed. "Helping Aunt Rosa. I didn't spill it this time, but I wanted to help anyway because we're a team." He said the last word with the pride of a kid who'd learned an adult phrase and decided it belonged to him. "We are a team," Rosa said softly, then caught herself. "Only when it's safe and during play, Mr. Carter. I make sure he—" "How long, Mr.?" Carter asked, eyes flicking from the rag to the crutches to his son's flushed cheeks. "How long have you been helping?" Ethan lifted his chin. "I stood by myself for almost 5 minutes today." The number punched through him. 5 minutes, he repeated. "Ethan, the therapist said months," Ethan interrupted, grinning. "But Aunt Rosa taught me the fence post trick." He jabbed a crutch toward the sliding doors that opened onto the garden. "You look at one spot. You breathe like you're blowing up a balloon. You don't listen to the scary knees." Rosa's hands folded at her waist. "Just small exercises, sir. Little games. We only try things I know are safe." "How do you know they're safe?" he asked. It came out harsher than he meant. The room seemed to shrink around the question. She met his gaze then, brown eyes steady in a face that had learned not to flinch. "My younger brother, Miguel, was born with similar challenges," she said. "I spent years carrying him to appointments, learning stretches, practicing with him in our living room, celebrating seconds that felt like hours. I'm not a professional. I know my limits, but I also know what practice looks like." Practice. The word slid into him like a key finding an old lock. Practice was how you beat your competitors. Practice was how you scale. Practice was how you become the man whose name others say in rooms you're not in. The idea that practice was also how your son learns to stand. He felt foolish for never having put those parts together. Ethan nudged the cloth toward Rosa with his shoe. "We do games every morning," he said. "Not cleaning games, standing games, balancing games, walking games." He shot a quick, proud glance at Mr. Carter. "Sometimes I cry, but Aunt Rosa says crying is just water leaving fear." Rosa's mouth twitched, half smile, half apology. "Words help more when they're small," she said, quieter, almost to herself. Mr. Carter's briefcase felt heavy in his hand. He set it down on the console like a man laying down a weapon he had forgotten he was carrying. "Every morning?" he asked. Rosa glanced at the clock above the mantel, as if confirming that time still worked the same way. "Before online classes, sir. If he's rested, if he wants to." "And he wants to," Ethan said. "I want to be strong like you." He swallowed, hesitating. "You'll be here tomorrow to see." The question was simple and unfair, and exactly the right size to fit inside the empty spaces he had been ignoring. He looked at his son. He looked at the hands of the woman who had taught him to breathe by blowing up imaginary balloons. He thought about the calendar he had curated like a museum exhibit of importance. He thought about what made money and what made a life. "I have a call at 8, he heard himself say. The old gravity tugged. Then he shook his head. "No, I'll move it, I'll be here." Rosa blinked once, surprised into silence. Ethan's smile grew so fast it looked like it might spill off his face. "Team practice," the boy said. "Tomorrow." "Team practice," Mr. Carter echoed, the words rough in his throat and strangely clean. Rosa bent to pick up the rag again. "We should finish this before it dries," she said. "Sticky gets stubborn." Ethan nodded, serious, and leaned into the cloth with his small weight. "Mr. Carter watched the two of them complete the circle they had started, the woman who had turned work into care, the child who had turned care into strength. The marble would gleam again in 10 minutes, but this was the first time he had noticed it mattered how it got that way. He stepped closer and crouched. Expensive slacks be damned. "Show me the right way," he said, to no one and to both of them. "I want to learn." Rosa hesitated, then handed him a clean microfiber cloth. "Small circles," she said. "No pressing. Let the cloth do the work." He followed, imperfect but willing. The three of them moved like a strange little orchestra. Child, maid, father. The world didn't explode. The phone didn't ring with something that couldn't wait. The sky outside did what skies do, folded from gold to blue to the kind of purple that makes you forgive a day for what it took. They finished. Rosa tossed the used rag into the laundry basket and straightened. "I'll bring Ethan his evening stretches calendar," she said. "We put stickers when he tries, not when he wins, when he tries." Mr. Carter felt a sting behind the eyes he had trained not to water. "That seems like a good rule." Ethan tapped one crutch on the tile. Tap, tap, as if punctuating a sentence. "Dad," he said, "if you like practice, you can watch the balloon breath tomorrow, and the fence post, and the statue game." He took a breath so big his shoulders lifted. "I can do hard things." "You can," Mr. Carter said. "You do." Rosa stepped toward the doorway. "I'll heat his dinner," she murmured. "Wait," Mr. Carter said, and both of them turned. He was surprised to realize he wasn't talking to his employee. He was talking to the person who had been standing guard at the gate he hadn't even seen. "Thank you," he said, "for being here when I wasn't." Rosa's face changed in a way that wasn't a smile and wasn't tears. "Children teach us how to show up," she said. "Ethan teaches me every day." They moved to the kitchen together, the three of them. Mr. Carter watched Rosa fix the small plate the way Ethan liked it. Carrots softened and cut like stars, chicken diced into even cubes, rice pressed into a little mound with a spoon to make it easier for Ethan to chase with his fork. He realized he knew 100 ways to read a quarterly report, but had not known the way his son wanted his rice. He pulled out a chair and sat. Ethan climbed into the one beside him with practiced caution, making the crutches into neat, parallel lines on the floor. "Can you tell me about the fence post trick again?" Mr. Carter asked. "Easy," Ethan said, eyes bright. "You pick something that won't move. You pretend your body is listening to that." He chewed, swallowed, continued. "Aunt Rosa says we don't have to be brave forever, just for the next 30 seconds. For the next 30 seconds, Mr. Carter repeated. He could do 30 seconds. He had been doing years of something else. As Ethan ate, Rosa rinsed the pan and wiped the countertop with the same patient efficiency she'd used on the floor. Mr. Carter watched her hands. They weren't the hands of invisibility anymore. They were the hands that had steadied a child and, without asking permission, steadied a family. The clock in the corner chimed the half-hour. It occurred to him that there were people who measured life in promotions, and there were people who measured it in stickers on a calendar for trying. For the first time, he suspected the second group slept better. Rosa set a glass of water in front of Ethan. "Small sips," she said. "Like balloons," Ethan replied, then looked at his father with a conspiratorial grin. "Dad, you can be on the sticker chart too." "How do I earn a sticker?" Mr. Carter asked. "By showing up," Ethan said simply. Rosa busied herself with the dish rack, but the corner of her mouth tugged up. "If this moment warmed your heart, tap like to help more people find Ethan's story. Your support truly helps us keep telling human stories that matter." After dinner, Rosa guided Ethan through a short stretch. Calves, hamstrings, a gentle hip opener she'd adapted using a rolled towel. Mr. Carter sat cross-legged on the rug, mirroring the movements with a seriousness that made Ethan giggle. The boy reached forward, fingers straining toward his toes. "Almost," Rosa encouraged. "Almost is also progress." When it was time for pajamas, Ethan paused at the bottom of the stairs. The steps were a mountain at dusk. Familiar, a little scary, possible. "Do you want me to carry you?" Mr. Carter asked, ready to lift. Ethan shook his head. "Team tries first," he said, then climbed, left foot crutch, right foot crutch, slow, steady, counting under his breath. At step 6, he wobbled. Carter's hands hovered, ready. Ethan steadied. At step 8, he smiled without looking back. At the landing, he turned and raised one crutch like a sword. "See? Balloon breath." He exhaled loud and long. "Tomorrow we practice more." "Tomorrow," Mr. Carter promised. And for once, the word didn't feel like an IOU. It felt like a date he wanted to keep. Rosa lingered at the base of the stairs, folding the small towel with hospital corners. "Good night, Mr. Carter." He nodded. "Good night, Rosa." He almost added something. Permission, gratitude, apology, but found he didn't need to. Tomorrow would be a better sentence. The house settled. The lilies in the foyer released a deeper sweetness, as if exhaling too. Mr. Carter stood in the quiet, phone in his pocket, calendar in his head. He pictured an 8 a.m. call sliding to 9, a meeting shifting to afternoon, a life rearranging itself around a boy who had decided to stand. He walked back to the living room and looked out at the dark garden, at the fence post that would be Ethan's anchor in the morning. For the first time in a long time, the night didn't feel like a tunnel to plow through with work. It felt like a room he could rest inside. If you want to cheer Ethan on, comment Team Ethan below. Your words become the fence post for families who need hope right now. Upstairs, a small voice sang nonsense to itself, while a woman with steady hands folded a towel into perfect quarters. Downstairs, a man who owned more than anyone should sat very still and decided to own less of the wrong things and more of the right ones. In the morning, practice would begin again. small circles, small breaths, 30 seconds at a time. And for the first time, he would be there to count with them. At 7:45 a.m., the backyard looked like a tiny clinic disguised as a playground. A yoga mat lay flat on the patio stones. 2 orange traffic cones marked a 10-foot lane. A jump rope waited coiled like a smiling snake. Rosa had set out a plastic bin full of things that didn't look like medical tools. Beanbags, stickers, a kitchen timer shaped like a tomato, a pair of foam dice, a roll of painter's tape. Mr. Carter stepped outside with a mug of coffee and stopped when he saw the painter's tape grid on the ground. A hopscotch board. Only the squares were wider, with numbers written in big block letters. Next to it, taped footprints indicated where Ethan should place his feet for different stances. On the patio table sat a spiral notebook, a cheap blue pen clipped to its wire spine, and a stack of index cards secured with a rubber band. Rosa came through the sliding door, balancing a tray. Ethan's water bottle, a small towel, and a laminated page with pictures. Ethan followed, crutches clacking lightly, pajamas replaced by a t-shirt that read, "Braver than yesterday." His hair stuck up in the back like a question. "Good morning, team," Rosa said, and the word team landed like a flag on new ground. "Good morning," Mr. Carter replied, surprising himself by meaning it. Rosa handed Ethan the laminated sheet. "Pick your 3 warm-ups," she said. The sheet was a visual menu. Stick figure drawings of ankle circles, toe taps, seated hamstring stretch, heel raises, hip abduction with a loop band. Ethan tapped the pictures with a tiny commander's authority. Ankle circles, toe taps, heel raises, because today is a big day. "Why is today a big day?" Mr. Carter asked. Ethan grinned. "Because every day is." Rosa laughed under her breath. Just a soft cloud of sound. She guided Ethan through each movement, cueing with simple words. Slow circles, toes up, toes down, heels up like you're growing. Mr. Carter watched how she placed 2 fingers lightly on Ethan's shin to help him feel when a muscle engaged, how she moved without rushing, how she celebrated effort but never acted shocked by success. The celebration was in the doing. When warm-ups were done, Rosa set the tomato timer for 30 seconds. "Statue," she said. Ethan nodded, set his crutches aside, and widened his stance inside the taped footprints. He fixed his gaze on the fence post in the yard like it owed him something. Rosa counted softly. 10, 15. Breathe out like you're fogging the window. Ethan exhaled slowly, cheeks ballooning, eyes locked on the post. At 28, his knees wobbled. Rosa hovered, hands ready but not clutching. At 30, Ethan dropped back onto the mat and pumped a fist. "Sticker!" he shouted. Rosa passed the spiral notebook to Mr. Carter. "Would you like to do the honors?" she asked. Inside, every day had a page, date at the top. Beneath it, tidy rows. Warm-ups completed, balance hold, seconds, steps to target, comments. Some comments were plain. Slept great. Sore calves. But some glowed. Tried again after a wobble. Chose hard thing. Told himself, I can do hard things. Mr. Carter felt his throat tighten. He added the number 30 next to balance hold and wrote with slow care. Noticed his own breath. "Nice handwriting," Rosa said gently. "He'll see it when we look back." "Do you review these with him?" "Every Sunday evening," she said. "We pick a favorite try of the week, not the biggest win." Mr. Carter ran a thumb along the paper's edge. "Why not the biggest win?" "Because trying is the one thing he can always control." He nodded. He had said versions of that in boardrooms and heard it now as if for the first time. They moved to heel to toe, walking along the painter's tape line. Rosa cued Ethan to keep his belly strong, to imagine his head floating up on a string. After a successful pass, she offered the foam dice. "Your turn to pick our next challenge," she said, turning choice into currency. Ethan rolled a 4 and a 2. 6, sit to stands, he said, giddy with the authority numbers gave him. Dad's on the team, Rosa added. He does them too. Mr. Carter chuckled and set his coffee aside. Yes, coach. They counted together, 1, 2, 3, standing from the little chair, then sitting with control, no flop. On the 5th one, Ethan's quads quivered. Rosa helped cue a tiny hinge at his hips. On the 6th, he landed with a plop and laughed so hard he hiccuped. Water break, Rosa declared, holding the timer like a referee. Sip, breath, check in. What's your body telling you? Ethan considered. My legs say they're cooking like toast, but not burnt. Good, Rosa said. Toasty legs are working legs. If you're cheering for Ethan's toasty legs, tap like. Your support helps this story of everyday courage reach more families who need hope. While Ethan drank, Mr. Carter glanced at the spiral notebook again. A page near the back had a tab labeled Ideas. He flipped to it and found notes in careful handwriting. Balance markers, try dots on the ground to cue feet. Visual anchors, window cling stars on fence. Teach reset breath for when he wobbles. Music, metronome app for step rhythm. He looked up. You wrote a curriculum, he said, half awe, half accusation, that the world had not paid for this curriculum. Rosa shrugged, embarrassed. It's mostly what I learned with my brother. I watch videos from PTs online at night. The ones from children's hospitals are good. I pause. I practice cues in Spanish and English so I can say them simple. You do all that after you work here all day? She smiled. After dinner and dishes, the world is quiet. That's a good time for learning. He cleared his throat. Tell me about Miguel, he said, only if you want to. Rosa lifted her face toward the thin morning sun, as if gathering the right words. Miguel was born at 32 weeks, she began. Tiny, a fighter. The doctors said a lot of big words. Mama learned to ask smaller questions. What can we do today? At first, it was just touch and sing. Later, stretches. Later, the same games Ethan plays now, only with other names. She smiled at the memory. We called the balance game Statue of Liberty back then. He held a plastic torch. What happened to your father? Mr. Carter asked softly. He left when the questions got big, she said without bitterness, like a weather report. Mama cleaned offices at night. I learned to cook rice and beans in 7th grade without burning the bottom. We didn't have money for private therapy, but we had a librarian who showed me the shelf with books about bodies. I would borrow the same book 3 times and copy the pictures by hand. She made a small motion with her wrist, like drawing. When Miguel was little, people looked at him and saw limits. We looked at him and saw practice. Mr. Carter imagined a girl at a kitchen table, tracing muscle diagrams, while a baby slept in a laundry basket beside her because there was no crib. He imagined her carrying a plastic torch for a boy who couldn't yet stand, showing him the shape of a future. Where is he now? He asked. Rosa's mouth curved. 16, in love with astronomy. He works Saturdays at the dollar store and saves for a telescope. He still has challenges. He also has friends. He texts me pictures of the moon. Ethan had finished his water and was lining up beanbags on the painter's tape like multicolored stepping stones. Space is cool, he announced, catching the end of the story. If Miguel looks at the moon and I walk to him, that means we can both do hard things. That's the idea, Rosa said. Mr. Carter watched as Rosa set up the next drill, mini lunges next to the patio table, hands on the edge for support. He noticed how she gave Ethan language to evaluate his own body. Does it feel strong hard or pain hard? She asked. Strong hard is good. Pain hard means we stop. Strong hard, Ethan said, game face on. Rosa looked at Mr. Carter. I tell him the difference because kids who want to please will push through pain. Pain is not the goal, he nodded. Thank you, he said. meaning it wider than the moment. When the drill ended, Rosa handed Ethan the foam dice again. He rolled a 1 and a 1. 2 steps, he shouted. Rosa nodded, set his crutches aside, and positioned him on the painter's tape line. 10 feet away, she placed a plastic dinosaur on the ground. "Destination Dino," she said. "Coach Dad is the spotter." Mr. Carter took his position at Ethan's elbow, heart thumping like he was about to negotiate a billion-dollar deal instead of catch a 40-pound boy if he wobbled. Ethan lifted his foot, placed it down, breathed. He lifted the other, placed it down, breathed. 2 steps landed. He wobbled and giggled and grabbed the dinosaur with both hands like he'd pulled a sword from a stone. "Sticker," he declared, triumphant. Rosa checked the timer, then the sky. 5 more minutes today, she said. "We keep good things small so they stay good." They finished with a reset, lying on the mat, knees bent, hands on belly. "Count 5 breaths," Rosa guided. "Let your belly rise like bread in the oven." Ethan obeyed, serious as a monk. Mr. Carter lay on the grass beside the mat and copied the motion, stunned by the fact that breathing could be a thing you forget to do right for years. After the session, Rosa moved to the kitchen to start breakfast. Mr. Carter lingered at the table with the spiral notebook. He flipped to the very first page. The handwriting was different that day, slanted, hesitant. Day 1, warm-ups, 2 or 3. Balance hold, 7 seconds. Steps, 0. Comments, he cried and then kept going. I cried later, and then kept going too. He closed the notebook gently, like a book of psalms someone had prayed into. "Do you ever worry about doing the wrong thing?" he asked when he followed her inside. "All the time," Rosa said, cracking eggs into a bowl. "That's why I keep things inside what I know, and why I write notes, and why I use timers and rules, and why I listen to Ethan's face more than my plan." "I mean with us," he clarified. "With this house, with lines." Rosa whisked and looked up. "I stay inside gratitude. You gave me work. I give you my best work. Ethan gives us both reasons to try." He leaned against the island, palms flat on cool stone. "Last night you said children teach us how to show up. Did Ethan teach you that?" "Miguel did first," she said. "Ethan reminds me." She slid the whisked eggs into a pan, the sound of the sizzle small and celebratory. "People think showing up is big. It's many smalls." "Many smalls," he repeated, liking the way the words fit together. Ethan clattered in, proud to carry the spiral notebook as if it were a trophy. "Let me show Dad the sticker chart," he said. He flipped to the back cover where a grid of gold stars had begun to cluster like constellations. Some squares were empty, some had stars put on crooked. None of them were perfect. All of them were true. Mr. Carter crouched so he could see it at Ethan's height. "That's a lot of trying," he said. Ethan nodded solemnly. "Sometimes trying feels like falling, but Aunt Rosa says falling is just a practice for getting up." Rosa plated pancakes and cut Ethan's into stars. She pushed the syrup toward the center of the table like a peace offering to the morning. "Eat while it's warm," she said, the universal sentence of caretakers across centuries. They ate. Between bites, Ethan told a story about a cartoon dinosaur with roller skates. Rosa laughed, honest and quick. Mr. Carter laughed too, slower at first, then easier, like a rusted hinge rediscovering swing. When the plates were empty, Rosa rinsed them and set them to dry. "I'll make a copy of today's page for his therapist," she said. "It helps to keep everyone rowing in the same direction." "You've been sharing this with the therapist?" Mr. Carter asked. "Once a week," she said. "I send photos. She was the one who reminded me to cue his breath when he gets scared." Rosa hesitated. "If you want, I can stop." "No," he said quickly. "Please keep going, and if you're willing, I'd like to talk with her too. Schedule a time we can all be on the call. You, me, Vanessa, the therapist, a real team." Rosa nodded. Okay. He took a breath that felt like it went deeper than his lungs. Rosa, I didn't know my son's routine, he confessed. I knew his appointment schedule and his lab results and his EOB forms. I didn't know his sticker chart. I didn't know his breath. Rosa dried her hands. Knowing now counts, she said. He believed her. If you believe knowing now counts, comment, I'm showing up. Your words might be the anchor another parent needs today. Before he left for his shifted meetings, Mr. Carter paused at the doorway to the backyard. The painter's tape lines gleamed faintly in the sun. The cones waited for small feet and brave stumbles. He imagined how many normal things had become pieces of a miracle here. A tomato timer, a roll of tape, a kitchen rag that taught a millionaire how to kneel. He turned back. Rosa, he said, feeling the rightness of saying her name with nothing attached to it. No title to shrink or elevate. Thank you for writing the kind of notes the world forgets to write. Rosa shrugged like kindness was cheap and endless. We just don't want to forget what trying looks like. When he left, Ethan followed him to the front hall, crutches ticking across the tile like a metronome. See you at lunch? The boy asked. See you at lunch, Mr. Carter said, and realized there was no meeting that sentence couldn't outrank. Rosa watched from the archway, a dish towel draped over her forearm like a ribbon. She made a small mark in the spiral notebook's margin, a star next to the line where it said, Dad watched, wrote, stayed. She capped the pen and smiled to herself. Many smalls. Vanessa returned late, the kind of late that smells like perfume you didn't put on yourself, a trace of other rooms, other conversations, other versions of your life. She slid her keys onto the marble console and paused. No laptop glow, no conference call voice coming from behind a door. Her husband sat on the living room sofa with nothing in his hands but his own fingers. You're home, she said, as if the house had made a mistake. I am, he said. Vanessa, I watched practice this morning. Her posture changed by degrees, a woman bracing for a legal update that would become her burden. And I saw our son stand for 30 seconds while counting his breath and staring down a fence post like it owed him money, he said, a smile that surprised him flickering over his mouth. Rosa has a notebook, a system. He chose his warm-ups from a picture menu. He tracked his tries. Vanessa exhaled something that wasn't a laugh. Of course he did, she said quietly. He shines with her. He nodded, swallowed. I didn't know about any of it. You didn't want to, she said, then softened at his flinch. No, that's not fair. You wanted the version with receipts and outcomes. I wanted that too. It's just, when the outcomes came slow, I stayed with the tries. Someone had to. He rubbed his palms together. I'm moving my mornings, he said. I want to be there. Vanessa studied him like a judge weighing a plea deal. You've said similar words before, she said, when he was born, when the diagnosis came, after your father's heart attack. Words are not nothing, but they're not the thing. Then I'll make them the thing, he said. Tomorrow at 8, and the day after. I'll send the emails tonight. She gave him a small, exhausted nod, the nod of a woman who wants to believe and has taught herself not to rely on wanting. The next morning he did what he said. He sent the emails. He moved the call. He showed up in the backyard at 7:58 with a coffee he didn't drink because it seemed rude to hold something that wasn't Ethan's work. They did ankle circles and heel raises and a game Rosa called Slow Lightning, a name Ethan adored because it made impossible sense like his life. The tomato timer ticked, his son held still like a statue of a boy who had learned movement by mastering stillness, and then his phone lit with urgent from his CFO. Numbers, a vendor crisis, a line of credit that needed his voice on it now. He swallowed, felt the tug, and put the phone face down on the patio table. 30 more seconds, he told himself. You can do 30 seconds. Ethan made it to 35. Team practice continued. Afterward, while Rosa cleaned up cones, he called the CFO and said, "I'm in at 9. Give them a bridge and tell them I'll personally sign the amendment when I arrive." His voice had the authority of a man who used to belong only to his calendar. He hung up and looked at the spiral notebook. He wrote in today's comments, "Dad chose 30 seconds too." That afternoon the social weather turned. Vanessa hosted 2 friends from the club, the kind of friends who photographed brunch plates and posted captions about gratitude under filtered sunsets. Sloane wore a white sweater so pristine it rejected the room. Mariah had sunglasses on her head in a house. They swept through the kitchen, complimented Vanessa's countertops as if she had mined the stone herself, and asked polite questions about Ethan, like volunteers reading from a script. Rosa stepped in to refill the coffee and set a plate of lemon cookies on a slate board. Ethan stood by the island, crutches drawn into neat parallel lines again, his favorite geometry. He smiled at Mariah, who smiled back, then glanced at Sloane, who didn't. "So this is the helper," Sloane said, in a voice that made helper sound like a problem. "Rosa," Vanessa said evenly. "She keeps our house standing." Sloane's eyes wandered to the spiral notebook sitting on the counter, its edge marked with a yellow sticky tab. "You let her write in your medical records now?" Rosa froze, sunlight catching the small freckles on her forearms. Vanessa's jaw ticked. "It's a practice log," Vanessa said, "for Ethan's balance work." Sloane sipped her coffee and shrugged, all shoulder and no spine. "I'm all for helping, I just think—" She drew a circle on the slate with her fingertip, as if making a point was a game. "Lines. Children confuse them. And then you have a maid who thinks she's family, and a child who calls her mommy, and then good luck sorting everyone out." Ethan's face changed, as if someone had shut a window. His hands tightened around his crutches. Rosa set the coffee pot down carefully, the way you set down an idea that wants to rattle. "I'm going to bring fresh water for Ethan," she said, stepping away. Vanessa placed both palms on the island and leaned in. "You're in my home," she said to Sloane, in a voice that could cut marble. "You will not insult the person who keeps my son standing." "I didn't insult," Sloane said, offended at being told she had done the thing she had done. "I observed. You should be careful. People talk. Then let them talk about how we treat people with respect," Vanessa replied. "They'll have so much to say they'll forget how to chew." Rosa returned with Ethan's water and set it beside him. He took a sip. His eyes went to Rosa's face the way boats go to harbors. She smiled, small and sturdy. "You good?" she whispered. He nodded. "Mini CTA number 1. If you believe respect starts at home, comment, respect matters. Your voice helps push stories like this to families who need them." Later, after the guests left with their white sweater and their sunglasses and their opinions, Vanessa found Rosa in the pantry rolling a dish towel into perfect thirds. "I'm sorry," Vanessa said. "That won't happen again." Rosa shook her head. "It happens everywhere," she said, not bitter, just accurate. "But thank you for saying the words out loud." "Ethan heard," Vanessa said, guilt prickling her throat. "I know," Rosa said. "We practiced breath." That evening another line got tested. The gated community guard called the house. "There's a woman at the entrance," he said to Mr. Carter with careful suspicion. "Says she's your staff. She's on foot." "On foot?" Mr. Carter asked, already walking toward the garage. Rosa, who had stayed late to fold laundry because the dryer had been in a mood earlier, had gone out to catch a bus and realized she'd left her wallet, her bus card, her ID, in the laundry room. She walked back to the gate and asked to be buzzed in. New guard, new rules, old biases. Mr. Carter drove to the gate and pulled up fast enough to froth dust. Rosa stood on the sidewalk, embarrassed, blooming like heat in her face. The guard's stance had the brittle rigidity of a person who confuses rules with dignity. "She works here," Mr. Carter said, sliding his window down. "She belongs here." "Sir, without ID," the guard began. "Her name is Rosa," Mr. Carter said. "She belongs here." The guard tapped the plastic barrier as if it were a decision. He looked at Rosa, then at Mr. Carter, then pressed the release. The arm lifted, the smallest of bridges. On the short drive to the house, Rosa apologized without using the word sorry. "I should have double-checked my bag," she said. "You shouldn't have to prove you belong every hour," he answered. "I'll fix it." He did. The next day, he called security and HR and issued a household vendor policy change, with names and photos on file, gate stickers for staff cars, and a note on the guardhouse screen that said, "Rosa, family access." He also put her on the family plan for phone minutes. It was a small thing. It was the right thing. Many smalls. The legal line crept in next, not with malice, but with paper. Their house manager, Glenn, who had been with the family longer than the marriage, hovered in the doorway of the study, holding a printed policy from the household employer's insurance company. "I thought you'd want to see this," he said to Mr. Carter. "Liability language. If Rosa's doing therapeutic activities, we may need a rider." Mr. Carter skimmed the dense paragraphs. He thought about how rider felt like a horse you could choose to mount or not. He thought about how choosing not to mount certain horses used to be his specialty. "Get the rider," he said, "and call the attorney. We'll update her contract. Therapeutic companion, salaried, with benefits, tuition clause, training stipend, and whatever we need to do to build a guardrail that supports her work, not a fence that boxes her in." Glenn blinked, approving, surprised, a little proud. "I'll draft the first pass." "Also," Mr. Carter added, "switch the payroll company so her checks don't hit 2 days late every holiday. The world tells you what it thinks of you in 1,000 late deposits." Glenn nodded and left, and Mr. Carter sat for a moment with the unusual sensation of his own values catching up to his resources. That night, the marriage line finally snapped tight. Ethan had fallen asleep after a long day. 2 stickers added to the chart for trying even when he didn't want to. Mr. Carter and Vanessa stood in the hallway, the kind of space where couples say true things because there's nowhere to sit. "I'm not sure I like how much we are leaning on her," Vanessa said, eyes on the nightlight glow. "I am grateful, I am overwhelmed, and I am afraid. Afraid we're asking her to fill a hole that has our names around it." He leaned against the wall. "I hear you," he said. "I don't want to replace us. I want to be us." Vanessa turned to face him. "Then be us," she said, simple as a recipe card. "Be there in the mornings, be there when the therapist calls, be there when he falls and wants to try again, and you want to pick him up to spare yourself the sound." He could have defended himself. He didn't. "I'm trying," he said. She nodded once. "Then say it to him, not to me." He walked into Ethan's room. In the soft light, he saw the small body turned on its side, one hand under the cheek, one hand open on the blanket, as if holding the edge of a dream. He sat on the floor beside the bed, the old hardwood pressing its story through his suit pants, and whispered, "I'm here in the morning, buddy. I'm here tomorrow and the day after and the day after." Ethan didn't wake, but his open hand curled like it had found something. On his way out of the room, Mr. Carter stopped at the family desk in the hall. He opened the calendar on the tablet mounted there. He blocked off 7:30, 9 a.m. every weekday for the next 2 months and typed a title in the slot, "Practice with Ethan." He hit "Notify All" and watched the little scent animation march off into the lives of the adults who had treated his mornings like a public square. Then he texted his assistant, "Standing block. Non-negotiable. Move everything. If you can't move it, it dies." It felt violent and holy. The next morning, the universe tested his resolve with a vengeance. Overnight, a supply chain fire broke out, literal, in a vendor's warehouse in Nevada. His phone screamed at 6:12 a.m. He answered, assessed, delegated, and then said, "I'll be in at 10. And the silence that followed was the sound of people remembering that he had a son. At 7:50, he walked into the backyard with a box of window cling stars for the fence post, because Rosa's idea deserved a flourish. Ethan clapped. Rosa laughed. Vanessa brought out 3 cups of water and stayed. They warmed up. They breathed. Ethan looked at the fence and then at his father, and then at Rosa, and it seemed for a second like all 3 had become different versions of one person, the person who tries. Halfway through Slow Lightning, Ethan wobbled hard and sat down faster than he meant to. He squeezed his eyes shut, bit his lip. His cheeks did the tremble that meant tears were trying to walk into the room. Rosa crouched. "What do we say?" she asked gently. Ethan whispered without opening his eyes. "We say I can do hard things and also I'm for." Rosa grinned. "Exactly." Mr. Carter felt something in his chest unclench. He had learned to bully himself into excellence. His son was learning to be kind to himself, into courage. He wanted to be on the team that taught that. After practice, the therapist joined by video. Rosa angled the tablet. Vanessa asked 3 precise questions about cueing and fatigue. Mr. Carter took notes, like a man who had rediscovered the use of a pen. They agreed on parameters, on what Rosa would do and what she would never do, on when to stop and when to push, on how to listen to Ethan's face. By afternoon, the social ripples from yesterday's coffee had grown teeth. Sloane texted Vanessa a link to a parenting blog post about boundaries with staff, the kind written by people who had staff, but not lives. Vanessa started typing a reply, erased it, then typed again. "We're building boundaries with love, not fear. He's thriving. Worry less about labels and more about what helps a child feel safe." She hit send and turned off her phone. At dinner, Ethan asked, "Can Sloane come to watch practice? Maybe if she sees, she'll stop saying mean things." He said it lightly, because kids sneak their hopes under jokes. "Maybe someday," Vanessa said, and they left it there because not every mountain is worth the climb. The next morning before practice, Rosa arrived 10 minutes early and taped a new square onto the painter's tape line, a reset zone. Ethan could step there whenever he felt overwhelmed. Mr. Carter watched her kneel, with the careful attention of someone making a map other people could follow. He thought about how many maps in his life had been drafted by other people's unpaid labor. He thought about how to change that. After practice, he pulled Glenn aside. "Add a line to Rosa's contract," he said. "Professional development budget. 2 conferences a year. If she wants online courses at night, reimburse them immediately." Glenn blinked again and nodded. "I'll make it happen." It still wasn't easy. There were mornings when Ethan's legs were more toast-burnt than toast-toasty. There were days when Mr. Carter barked at a junior associate in a way he used to, and then apologized in a way he was learning. There were afternoons when Vanessa closed the door of the powder room and cried into a towel for 3 minutes, because 3 minutes was all she had, and sometimes it was enough to make the day bend. There was also this. At the end of a long Tuesday, Ethan asked, "Can we all go outside and look at the moon? Aunt Rosa's brother likes the moon." And they did. Rosa and Ethan and Vanessa and Mr. Carter, standing on the patio with their necks tipped back, 4 people who had not solved the world, who had not even solved their house, breathing under a rock that had watched every generation try. Around then, Mr. Harlow called. The future test, the money angle, the offer Rosa would have to weigh in her hands. But that's the next act. Tonight, the conflict sat where conflicts live, in the ordinary, the daily frictions and large opinions and tired hearts, trying to decide if they want to be right or be kind. Mr. Carter brushed his knuckles over Ethan's hair and said, "Tomorrow. Practice?" And Ethan said, "Team practice." And Rosa said, "Many smalls." And Vanessa let herself say yes. If you're still with Team Ethan, tap, like and subscribe. It helps this story find more families who need a reason to keep trying. The fence post wore a crown of window-cling stars now, silver, blue, a stubborn gold one that kept curling at the corner, and Rosa pressed flat each morning with her thumb. It wasn't just a point to stare at anymore. It was a promise board. Ethan shuffled onto the patio in his braver-than-yesterday t-shirt and dinosaur socks. He paused, noticing the new stars, and saluted them with his crutch like a knight greeting banners before battle. "Good morning, team," Rosa said, bringing out the tray, water bottle, tomato timer, sticker sheet, and the spiral notebook that had begun to look like a family Bible. Mr. Carter stepped outside at 7:50 with his phone already on Do Not Disturb. The company fire in Nevada was still smoldering, inboxes, people, all of it, but the morning air didn't care. It smelled like wet grass, and for once he let that be the most important data point at 8 a.m. Warm-ups ran like a song they all knew, ankle circles, toe taps, heel raises. Rosa added a new drill, moon steps, slow-motion lifts with a tiny pause at the top. "As if gravity is softer today," she said. And Ethan loved the idea so much he floated his arms with them, astronaut serious. "Statue," Rosa cued. Ethan set his crutches aside, feet square on the painter's tape footprints, gaze locked on the starred fence post. The tomato timer ticked like a cricket. 10, Rosa whispered. 15. Reset breath. Mr. Carter watched his son find stillness, like a door he could open from inside. Ethan's knees quivered, his jaw tightened, then softened, the small muscles of stubbornness relaxing into skill. 30, Rosa murmured. Ethan didn't drop. 45. He blinked sweat into his lashes and didn't look away from the stars. 60, she said, voice low and proud. The timer dinged. Ethan sagged onto the mat and laughed, tired, triumphant, 4 years old and ancient with victory. Mr. Carter let out a breath he hadn't noticed he was holding. "A full minute," he said, the words tasting like bright water. "Sticker!" Ethan cried, grabbing the sheet. "Coach Dad, you do the honors," Rosa said, passing the spiral notebook. Mr. Carter wrote, "Balance hold. 60s and beneath it, found the door inside." He felt foolishly shy about the sentence. Rosa read it and nodded once, as if he'd told the truth. They moved to heel to toe along the tape line, then sit to stands from the little chair. On the last rep, Ethan wobbled and bumped the chair with his knees, then steadied on his own without grabbing the table. "Did you see that?" Mr. Carter blurted. "I did," Rosa said, calm and delighted. "That's you, champ. That's your body learning your body." "Can I try steps?" Ethan asked, itchy for the next mountain. Rosa glanced at the clock, then at his face. 2 to the dinosaur, she said, setting the plastic T-Rex on the tape 10 inches away. "Spotters ready." They had done 2 steps yesterday and 2 the day before. Today, Ethan planted his feet like someone who had decided to move a house and then did it 1 brick at a time. He lifted and placed, lifted and placed. The second step landed. He grabbed the dinosaur and raised it like a trophy. "Again," he said, breathless. "Again," Rosa agreed. She nudged the dinosaur another inch. 2 more steps. Another inch. Ethan worked, and the morning worked with him. 10 feet away, Mr. Carter placed himself, arms open, eyes wet. "Walk to me," he whispered. "Walk to me, buddy." Ethan set the dinosaur down, serious now. The air held still in case it might scare him. Step, breath, step, breath. On the 4th step, his foot landed clumsy, edge of tape, ankle wavering. "Reset," Rosa reminded. Ethan inhaled long and slow, fogging the window in his mind. The 5th step found the line again. At 6, he looked up at his father. "Eyes on the stars," Rosa said gently. "They don't move." He laughed once and looked back at the fence post as if telling it a secret. 7, 8. Mr. Carter bit his lip. 9, 10. He fell into his father's arms on step 11 and shook with a sound Mr. Carter hadn't heard since the night Ethan was born. The kind of sound people make when the world is bigger than their body. I walked. Ethan sobbed against his father's shirt. Dad, I walked to you. You did, Mr. Carter said, voice ruined and happy. You did, champ. Rosa turned away to hide a tear that didn't need hiding. She pressed the gold star down on the corner that always curled. For once, it stayed. If you felt that moment, comment, "Keep going, Ethan," and hit like your words are the stars on his fence post for families watching this right now. Breakfast tasted like cinnamon and earned hunger. Vanessa joined them at the island with her hair still damp from a shower and asked Ethan for a full report. He made his hands into walking legs and demonstrated on the countertop, complete with wobble and reset breath. Rosa showed Vanessa the notebook. Vanessa traced the numbers with her finger like a parent tracing a name on a birth certificate. I want to talk to the attorney today, Mr. Carter said between bites, and HR. Rosa, your role needs to reflect what you're doing. Title, benefits, all of it. We'll add a liability rider, a training stipend, and, if you want it, tuition. Tuition, Rosa echoed. For a physical therapist assistant program, he said, trying not to oversell and accidentally selling the sky. Community college has one, nights and weekends. We'll build the schedule around Ethan. You shouldn't have to choose between caring for him and becoming who you've already been practicing to be. Rosa set down her fork, hands folded to keep them from shaking. Sir, my English is better with children than in classrooms. You speak the language of bodies and care, Vanessa said. Classrooms will be lucky to have you. Rosa's eyes went glassy. She looked at Ethan. If I study more, she told him, solemn, I can help you better. Ethan nodded like a foreman approving a building plan. Study a lot, he said. I'll put extra stickers when you try. The attorney called at noon. They drafted a new contract in clear language. Therapeutic companion. Salary with sick days, health insurance, education fund, a defined scope of practice with safety guardrails, and collaboration with Ethan's licensed therapist. Glenn, the house manager, slid papers onto the kitchen table with a man's quiet pride in a machine running right. Is this okay for you? Mr. Carter asked, not the boss of the moment so much as its steward. Rosa read slowly, lips moving as she tracked the words. When she reached the tuition clause, she put her palm over it like she was trying to keep it from flying away. It's more than okay, she said. It is too much. It's exactly enough, Vanessa corrected gently. They all signed. Ethan drew a T-Rex next to Rosa's name as a witness. Glenn promised to drop the packet at the attorney's office on his way to pick up the new gate stickers. After lunch, Mr. Carter drove Rosa to the community college. They walked into student services together, two people from two different worlds that a 4-year-old had bridged. The counselor on duty wore chunky earrings and spoke with the efficient kindness of someone who had watched 1,000 second chances succeed. Physical therapist assistant? She said, scrolling. We have a fall cohort and a spring cohort. Evenings are possible if you're willing to take 2 years instead of 1. 2 years is many smalls, Rosa said, half to herself, and smiled. The counselor explained placement tests, immunization records, a background check Rosa had already passed when she took the job here. There would be CPR certification and clinicals later. It's a lot, the counselor admitted. But I've never met a PTA who regretted it. Rosa nodded. I already do the work, she said softly. I'd like to learn the names for what I've learned to see. They came back with a packet thick enough to anchor a ship and a list of next steps, deadlines circled, costs already covered by a man who had decided his wealth meant most when it moved. The afternoons began to change. Twice a week, Rosa left an hour early for a prep class on campus. Medical terminology, intro to kinesiology. Vanessa took over evening stretches those nights, cueing breath and heel raises with a seriousness that made Ethan grin. On the other nights, Rosa sat at the kitchen table after dinner with a notebook, underlining terms and drawing muscles the way she had at 13 by library light. Mr. Carter moved his laptop out of the home office and onto the opposite side of the table, where he pretended to work and actually watched someone rebuild her life with a pen. Company transformation crept in too, not with a press release but with calendar events. He blocked 7:39 every weekday indefinitely and told his assistant that time was sacred. He stopped scheduling standing 7 a.m. breakfasts with men who considered urgency a substitute for purpose. He wrote an email to his leadership team titled Many Smalls, and in it outlined a new norm: 30-minute buffers between meetings to walk, call a family member, or breathe. 2 replies came back, calling it soft. 12 came back, calling it human. The CFO wrote, "Your P&L will reflect this in ways spreadsheets can't measure." He pinned that and read it again on days he wanted to backslide. Meanwhile, Ethan started telling time not by cartoons, but by practice. "After the moon steps we read," he said. "After slow lightning we draw. After statue we dance." He announced to anyone who would listen that his reset zone could fit 2 people, and sometimes he made his dad stand there with him and breathe just because it seemed fair. They built a tri-board in the hallway. Cork and string and Polaroids. First 30 seconds, first 60, first 2 steps, first 10. First day Rosa wore a backpack to class. First dinner where Vanessa burned the chicken and everyone laughed and ordered pizza because burned was also a kind of trying. There were setbacks that didn't feel cinematic. One morning Ethan's legs were too tired. He cried angry tears and flung a beanbag at the cones. Rosa made the reset zone into a fort with a blanket and put a flashlight inside. They lay under it, breathing like explorers. Mr. Carter wanted to fix and couldn't, and learned to witness instead, to love his kid through the part where progress is a lumpy quilt. Another day, Ethan tripped on the tape and scraped his knee hard. Blood came fast. His face went chalky. Mr. Carter reached for him. Rosa caught his eye. Pain hard, not strong hard, and together they knelt on either side of their boy. "We stop when pain speaks," she said. Ethan nodded, lip trembling. They cleaned the knee, put on a superhero bandage, and called it. Later that afternoon, Ethan asked if he could put a sticker for stopping, and Rosa said yes, because some kids win by pushing and some kids win by learning to pause. Evenings shifted at the dinner table. Rosa had always eaten in the kitchen or late, a habit built from work in houses where invisibility was part of the job. One night, Ethan tugged a 4th chair from the corner and dragged it to the table with loud, proud scrapes. "This is for Rosa," he declared, "because teams eat together." Rosa hesitated at the threshold, habit wrestling with belonging. Vanessa stood and set a plate at the empty place like a person making a rule. Mr. Carter poured water into a glass and put it there as if filling it might fill the old gap. Rosa sat. For the first few bites, the air hummed with the story of doors newly opened. Then Ethan asked about Rosa's school, and she told him the Latin names for muscles, and they all tried saying gastrocnemius without laughing, and failed. She taught them plantarflexion and dorsiflexion with their hands, and Ethan made his fingers walk across the table with their new words. It felt both ordinary and corrected. On a Thursday, the therapist came for an in-home evaluation. She wore sneakers and a smile that reached her eyes, and she greeted Rosa not like a staff member, but like a colleague. They reviewed the notebook. They watched Ethan hold 60 seconds again, and then add 5. The therapist taught Rosa a new cue for hip stability and complimented her notes. "You have a knack for dosage," she said. "You keep wins small enough that they're safe and big enough that they're worth wanting." After she left, Mr. Carter stood at the sink, hands braced on the counter, head bowed. Vanessa came up beside him and leaned her shoulder into his. "You're doing it," she said quietly. "You said you would, and you are." He nodded, the gratitude a hot ache behind his ribs. "So are you," he said. "So is she." Weekend came with a different rhythm. Pancakes in star shapes, tiny adventures. They built a cardboard rocket, taped construction paper buttons to the wall, and flew to the moon in the living room. At night they actually looked at the moon, sending a picture to Miguel with the caption, "We saw your friend." Miguel texted back a photo taken through a scratched telescope. A cratered face not looking at anyone, and somehow seeing them all. On Monday, the Nevada crisis at the company hit a bad turn. Insurance lawyers, replacement orders, a vendor suddenly insolvent. The old version of Mr. Carter would have slept at the office and told himself it was noble. The new one showed up at 8 on the patio with a pair of cones and a joke about gravity. He took a call at 10 and told the lawyer to find a path that didn't set fire to people for the sake of inventory. The lawyer said that would cost more. He said they'd make it back by not being the kind of company that bled its partners dry. It felt like moving money from one column to another in a ledger called soul. If you believe many smalls change a life, tap like and subscribe. It helps this story reach people who need a fence post to look at today. One afternoon, Rosa's mother came to the house for the first time. She arrived holding a paper bag of pan dulce and a folded cardigan, as if kindness might be cold and need covering. She hugged Rosa at the door, then stood in the living room and looked around like the room might look back. "Mrs. Morales," Vanessa said, offering her hand and then ignoring it to offer both arms. "I've wanted to meet the woman who raised the woman who's raising us." Mrs. Morales laughed, surprised into it. She spoke mostly Spanish. Rosa translated the words the way she translated everything, cleanly with love. Ethan showed her the triboard. She touched each photo with 2 fingers, reverent, like counting rosary beads. She whispered something to Rosa that made Rosa's eyes shine. "She says she prayed for doors, not for miracles," Rosa translated. "Doors we could walk through if we were brave. She says this house is a door." They ate pan dulce with coffee at the kitchen table. Mr. Carter took a small concha and thought about how sweetness sneaks into your mouth and tells you to trust the day. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Mr. Carter opened his laptop and drafted an email he had been afraid to write. To the board. He explained new guardrails around his time, named the mornings as non-negotiable, and outlined a plan to delegate a slice of operations to the COO who had always been ready. He didn't apologize. He wrote another email to HR proposing a family presence policy, paid time for employees to attend crucial appointments with their children or aging parents, no questions asked beyond what the law required. He added a line about tracking business outcomes, not chair time. He hit send and sat very still. When he closed the laptop, the house hummed the soft electricity of a place holding people instead of just things. Rosa's textbooks lay open on the table beside a half-finished worksheet. Vanessa's calendar had Ethan's therapy plan written into it in her neat block letters. The spiral notebook rested on top like a roof. The next morning dawned with an edge of wind. The fence post stars fluttered. Ethan stood between the cones and watched them dance. "If they fall off," he said, "we can press them back." "We can," Rosa agreed. "Or we can put new ones," Mr. Carter added. Ethan set his crutches down. He took 3 steps without flinching, paused, grinned, and took 3 more. He turned toward Rosa and performed a very serious bow. "Coach," he said, "what is our plan to be fast like a cheetah?" Rosa laughed. "Our plan is to be steady like a turtle until the turtle learns to sprint." He pretended to be offended, and then pretended to be a turtle who had just remembered he had rockets. He ran 2 proud, messy, glorious steps that counted as run because he decided they did. He stumbled into Rosa's arms, and she hugged him like she wasn't catching him, but releasing him into the next square of tape. Later that day, the 3 adults sat at the table with the notebook and wrote the day's line together. Balance, 60s plus steps, 11 to Dad. Comments, team tried. Rosa signed. Dad stayed. Mom laughed. Moon said hello. Rosa underlined team tried and closed the cover with a gentle pat. The way you close a book, you know you'll open again tomorrow. Outside, the wind tugged at the fence post stars. Some curled, some stayed. None of it changed what the morning had already made. Inside, a boy counted breaths, a woman memorized muscles, a man learned how to spend his life. And somewhere across town, a rival watched and waited with an offer he thought no one could refuse. But that was a different kind of math, and this house was learning a different kind of number. One more second, one more step, one more small that made the next small possible. The call came on a wind-noisy Thursday, the kind of afternoon when emails stacked like dishes and the Nevada situation slouched in the corner like a storm you kept pretending wasn't still raining. Mr. Carter glanced at the caller ID and almost let it go to voicemail. Harlow. He answered anyway. Carter. Always a pleasure, Harlow purred. Listen, word gets around. Gated communities, country clubs, the same 5 hairdressers. You've got a maid who's a miracle worker. She's not a miracle, Mr. Carter said evenly. She's disciplined care. Call it what you want, Harlow said. My nephew has CP. Money's never been the problem. Results have. I'd like to buy your asset. She's not an asset, Mr. Carter replied. She's Rosa. Harlow chuckled. Everything's an asset if you write the check with enough zeros. Double her salary. Apartment walking distance to our place. Full benefits for her family. I'll even sponsor her schooling. Give me a number and I'll beat it. Mr. Carter felt the old reflex, compete, outbid, own, rise in his blood. He looked out the window where Rosa was helping Ethan line up cones with the seriousness of surgeons. Rosa makes her own decisions, he said, but she has a contract and a life here. Contracts tear, Harlow said, amused, and lives move. Ask your first wife. The line went quiet enough to hear his own pulse. Send your offer, Mr. Carter said finally, to me, not to her. Already did, Harlow replied, satisfied, and I found her number. He hung up. Mr. Carter stared at his phone, then at the backyard, then at the spiral notebook on the table. It looked suddenly more valuable than any portfolio he'd ever held. That evening, Rosa stood in the study doorway, holding the offer letter with 2 hands, like it might bite. He says he'll pay for my mother's health insurance, she whispered. He'll cover Miguel's school fees. The salary is... She shook her head, as if the number had altitude sickness. This could change my family's life. Vanessa came in slowly, drying her hands on a dish towel, the way people come into rooms where hearts are on the table. It's a lot, she said softly. Rosa nodded. But leaving Ethan now? Her eyes filled. He is in the middle of becoming. I promised him many smalls. It feels like dropping a bridge mid-river. Mr. Carter leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He had spent a career convincing markets that loyalty was a line item and exits were just strategy. This wasn't that kind of math. I can match what matters, he said. Salary, insurance, tuition. We'll set up a fund for Miguel's telescope and more school. We'll codify time off so you can be with your mother when she needs you. And if in a year you still want to move on, I'll help you land somewhere that honors the way you work. No hard feelings, no contracts as cages, but I'm asking you to stay. Rosa held his gaze. She had waited tables for men who couldn't look at her and cleaned houses for women who never thanked her. Deciding to trust a rich man's promises wasn't easy. Why? She asked. Why so much for me? Because you gave me my son, he said simply. Not his legs, not his diagnosis rewritten. My son, the brave one, the one I get to show up for. The study door creaked. Ethan stood there, pajamas bunched at the ankles, hair sleepy fierce. He had heard just enough to know everything. "Please don't go," he blurted, crossing the rug with the fast little clatter of crutches. He wrapped his arms around Rosa's waist and pressed his face into her apron. "You're my mom too." The room tipped. Words are small until a child says them like a bell. Rosa went to her knees. "Sweetheart," she breathed, hands on his cheeks. "You have a wonderful mom." She looked up at Vanessa, whose hand had flown to her mouth, whose eyes were already wet. "And I am Rosa. I am your Rosa." Ethan nodded like a philosopher concluding a treatise. "You can be both." Vanessa lowered the towel and crossed the room. She knelt on Ethan's other side. "He's right," she said. "Love is not a pie with only so many slices. It keeps being enough." She took Rosa's hand. "Stay. Not as help we keep a professional distance from. As family, we keep promises with." Mr. Carter swallowed around the ache in his throat. "We'll put it in writing," he said, because he had learned that words are better when they're roofs, not weather. "All of it." Rosa laughed through tears. "I like roofs," she said. "I grew up under too much weather. If you believe love grows when shared, comment, 'Love isn't a pie.' Your words lift up families figuring this out in real time." The next day, Harlow requested a meeting in person to negotiate like adults. They met at a steakhouse where the lighting was dark enough to make lies look handsome. Harlow slid a folder across the table like contraband. "Triple," he said, tapping the number, "and a signing bonus." Mr. Carter didn't touch the folder. "You could offer the moon," he said. "She's not a commodity." "You talk like a man who never had to choose between rent and breakfast," Harlow said. "Good deeds make good PR. Be honest with yourself." "I am," Mr. Carter replied, "and one day you should try it." He stood, leaving the folder unopened on the linen napkin, a mistake Harlow wouldn't know he'd made until later when a different kind of math started showing up on the bottom line. At home, they wrote addenda. Glenn added Rosa to the family cell plan and the emergency contact list. HR processed the tuition payments and fast-tracked the liability rider. The attorney drafted a clause of mutual choice, the kind that let Rosa leave with dignity and let the Carters keep their word if she stayed. Boundaries became bridges with names and dates. The study smelled like toner and relief. Still, tests rarely arrive one at a time. A week later, Ethan hit a plateau. 60 seconds stayed 60. 11 steps wouldn't become 12. One morning, he threw the foam dice so hard they bounced off the fence and disappeared into rosemary. "I'm not getting better," he sobbed, breath hiccuping. "I'm the same." Rosa pulled the blanket over the reset zone and made a cave of kindness. "Some days the turtle sleeps," she said. "Sleeping is part of sprinting later." "I hate the turtle," Ethan cried. "Me too sometimes," she said, which was not what a therapist would say, but exactly what a person should. "Do you want to hate it together for 1 minute? Then we'll be kind to it again." They sat in the cave and hated the turtle until the timer dinged. Then they wished it well, because that's how you get back on the path without breaking your feet on your own anger. Mr. Carter watched from the patio step, hands knotted, longing to fix what wasn't fixable with money or force. He took his own breath. The fence post stars held their ground in the breeze. If you faced a plateau and kept going, tap, like, and comment many smalls. Your story might be the reset zone someone needs today. 2 nights later, Rosa sat at the kitchen table with her textbooks, a stack of flashcards, and a mug of cinnamon tea. Vanessa joined with a glass of water and a highlighter. They quizzed gastrocnemius and dorsiflexion and laughed when they both tripped on proprioception. Mr. Carter set down a check he'd had framed like art, the first tuition payment receipt, On the line where it said student, it read Rosa Morales. On the line where it said payor, it read Ethan Carter Family Fund. Beneath, in small letters, Many Smalls Scholarship. Rosa touched the glass with her fingertips. "What if I can't pass the tests?" she asked, voice thin at the edges. "Then we try again," Vanessa said. "And if I pass?" Rosa asked. "Then you teach us better," Mr. Carter said, smiling. "Like you already do." Ethan padded in, hair a mess, dragging his blanket. "Am I allowed to have 2 moms and a coach?" he asked, matter of fact as weather. "Yes," Vanessa said, kissing his head. "You are allowed to have exactly as much love as fits." Ethan nodded, satisfied, and climbed into Rosa's lap. She wrapped the blanket around both of them. They sat like that for a long time, like a definition of family that a dictionary should have included and didn't. The next morning the plateau cracked, not with fireworks, just with a small decision repeated. Ethan's 60 seconds became 65, 11 steps became 12. On step 13, he wobbled, reset, and grinned a grin that looked like a sunrise had chosen his face. They wrote it in the notebook. Balance, 65 steps, 13. Comments, turtle napped. Turtle woke, team stayed. Rosa added a star next to team stayed and underlined it twice. Arlo texted one last time, the kind of message men send when they don't understand that no is a sentence. "Call me when the charity glow fades." Mr. Carter didn't reply. Families don't negotiate their love with men who confuse value with valuation. They had passed the test. The morning Ethan ran for the first time arrived like a prank, on a Tuesday that forgot to be dramatic. The sky was plain blue. The wind yawned. The fence post stars clung, a little faded now and somehow more loyal for it. "Moon steps," Rosa said, Rutina's heartbeat. "Slow lightning, statue." Ethan did each as if he'd invented them. 65 seconds held. He put the crutches aside with a little ceremony, palms flat on the table edge, weight into his heels, belly tight. "Coach," he said, "may I try fast turtle?" Rosa blinked. "Fast turtle?" "Turtle that remembers he has rockets," she laughed. "Yes, to the cone and back. Dad spotter on the left, Mum on the right. I'm the fence post watch." "On your breath," Mr. Carter said, hands trembling in a way that didn't frighten him anymore. Ethan inhaled. He set his jaw. He let it go. Step, step, step. Small, thrilled, a little chaotic. Then a pause. Then step, step, step back. It was not pretty. It was not even what a coach would call running. It was his. "I ran," he shouted, landing in the reset zone and bouncing like a pinball. "I ran, I ran, I ran," Mr. Carter whooped. Vanessa laughed and cried at once. Rosa covered her mouth and then didn't bother, because some moments aren't for tidy. If you felt that spark, comment "fast turtle" and share. Someone out there needs to see a turtle remember his rockets today. Word spread the way good news always does, quietly, through people who were watching for it. The therapist brought celebratory stickers shaped like comets. Glenn bought donuts for the household staff and wrote Team Ethan on the box in Sharpie. Security waved Rosa through the gate with smiles like confetti. The guard, who had been brittle that first day, tipped his cap and said, "Family access," and meant it. At preschool, end of year came with paper mortarboards and songs sung off-key. Ethan walked to the little stage without crutches. The auditorium noise fell into hush like the air at the top of a Ferris wheel. At the microphone, he cleared his throat the way he had heard adults do. "My name is Ethan Carter," he said, "and when I was littler I used to think stairs were mountains. Now I think mountains are stairs if you have a team." He pointed at the second row. "This is my mum." He pointed to the aisle. "This is my dad." He pointed to Rosa. "And this is my other mom who is named Rosa, but she says she is Rosa, not Mom, and that is fine. She teaches me breath and turtle rockets." The end. The crowd laughed and then clapped and then stood up. Later, in the parking lot, Sloane walked over with a look like she didn't know how to be a person in this scene. "I owe you an apology," she told Rosa, words careful as glass. "I spoke from a place I don't want to live in anymore. I'm sorry, I was wrong." She held out a paper bag. Inside was a stack of window-cling stars. "For when the old ones fade." Rosa took the bag, surprised. "Thank you," she said, not making a speech out of it. Summer ripened. Rosa started her program officially. 2 nights a week on campus, weekends sometimes for labs. She passed her first exam and taped the grade into the spiral notebook as if it were part of Ethan's progress too. Miguel came to visit in August, gawky tall, tender, an astronomer with a cracked phone and a sky-deep grin. He and Ethan lay on the grass and held hands and named clouds. "Do you still do Statue of Liberty?" Ethan asked. Miguel lifted a plastic flashlight and posed, wobbling and laughing. "Always," he said. Mr. Carter watched the boys and felt awe land. How a house changes when you stop building rooms to impress and start building rooms to hold. Work changed in ways that would never fit on a quarterly report. He stopped answering emails past dinner. He fired a vendor who screamed at his staff and replaced them with a smaller firm that over-communicated and under-promised and then over-delivered. He stopped tolerating leaders who bragged about missing their kids' games. He started measuring the kind of productivity that doesn't need you to bleed to count. He also wrote checks. The first built a fenced-in inclusive playground at Ethan's preschool, ramps, sensory paths, surfaces soft as kindness. The second endowed the Many Smalls Scholarship at the community college to cover books and bus passes for PTA students who were also caretakers. He didn't post about either on LinkedIn. The only pictures lived on the Carter's fridge next to Ethan's drawings. Dinosaurs, stars, a turtle with rockets strapped to its shell. Fall brought a crispness that made breath look like speech. Ethan could walk most of the day now without crutches. He kept them by the door like old friends. Some mornings he needed them, some mornings he didn't. Rosa taught him that both kinds of mornings counted the same. The fence post stars faded and fell. They pressed new ones on. The painter's tape wore away. They chalked lines instead. The tomato timer broke, and they replaced it with a phone app that made a softer ding. Progress looked exactly like life. Objects aging as children gained ease. In October, the family hosted a backyard picnic for the people who'd held them up. Therapist, Glenn, security, the night nurse who'd sat with Ethan during a fever last winter, Mrs. Morales, Miguel. They ate pan dulce and barbecue and the star-shaped pancakes that had started as therapy and become tradition. When the sun lowered, Vanessa clinked a glass with a spoon. "I used to think resilience was something you either had or didn't," she said, voice carrying in the golden light. "Then I watched my son learn it like a language because people spoke it to him. Patiently, daily, in small words and true actions. This family is bigger than the 4 of us. Thank you for being our many smalls." Rosa squeezed Ethan's hand and whispered, "Your mom is good with words." "Yeah," Ethan whispered back. "She says a lot of nice ones." Winter arrived carrying a calendar full of check marks. Rosa passed her midterms. Ethan did a school fun run, walking most of it, jogging the stretch near the finish, while the entire 2nd grade yelled his name. Mr. Carter got a call from Harlow's CFO, quietly asking about his family presence policy because their attrition rates had spiked and, quote, "We think we made some wrong gods." He sent a PDF and said nothing smug. In late February, Rosa finished her clinical rotation and cried in the car because her supervisor had used the word gift and meant it. Vanessa cried too because some words are contagious in the right direction. Ethan didn't cry. He designed a sticker that said Coach Rosa and put it on her notebook. Spring greened the city. On a bright Saturday, they opened a small storefront in a busy strip of Ordinary. a laundromat, a taqueria, a barbershop, and now, between them, the Ethan Center. The logo was a turtle with a tiny comet tail behind him. Inside, a single therapy room held parallel bars, soft mats, cones, tape, and a bulletin board labeled Try Stories. On one wall, a mural showed a fence post with stars and the words Many Smalls in a child's hand. They didn't charge families who couldn't pay. They didn't advertise. Parents found them anyway, because kindness has a mailing list more efficient than any algorithm. At the ribbon cutting, Ethan insisted on scissors too big for his hands. "We are open for business," he announced, then whispered to Rosa, "What is business?" "Helping," she said, "with paperwork." They all laughed. Mr. Carter gave a short speech about doors instead of miracles. Vanessa read a letter from the therapist who couldn't be there. "What you built isn't a clinic. It's a way of telling the truth about how bodies learn." Mrs. Morales brought pan dulce with tiny fondant stars. Miguel set up his telescope out back and let anyone look at the moon for free. Reporters didn't come. That felt perfect. If this ending gave you hope, tap like and subscribe, and share with someone who needs a fence post star today. That night, back at the house, they sat around the kitchen table with the spiral notebook that had become their family chronicle. The last page had a few lines left, room for one more entry. Ethan printed carefully. Balance. Forever steps. Many comments. Team tried, team stays, fast turtle forever. He looked up. "Is forever a lot?" he asked. "It's one small at a time," Rosa said. "Mr." Carter slid an envelope across the table. Admissions paperwork for Rosa's final certification exam, already paid, test date highlighted. Vanessa added a key on a little turtle keychain, the spare to the Ethan Center. "In case you forget yours," she said, which was parent speak for "we trust you with everything." They went outside to say goodnight to the fence post, as if it were a person leaving town. The new stars gleamed. The old glue traced ghosts. Ethan touched the wood. "Thank you for listening," he told it. The wind moved through the rosemary. Across the city, families put kids to bed and washed dishes and thought about money and love and how to be brave tomorrow. In one backyard, a boy stood between a woman who had learned the names for care, a mother who had learned that love multiplies when you hand it out, and a man who had learned that showing up is the only wealth that spends. Ethan reached for Rosa's hand without looking, and found it. He reached for Vanessa's with the other, and she took it. Mr. Carter stood behind them and felt, very clearly, that for the first time in a long time, he was exactly where he was supposed to be, counting breaths, counting steps, not counting anything that didn't matter. The stars were quiet. The fence post kept its watch. The turtle forgot and remembered his rockets again and again and again. And the story kept going, the way all true stories do, one try, one breath, one many smalls at a time.